Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. This is the continuation of the last two videos that we have been discussing about creating sample servlet project. Okay, so in this short video, once again we are going to continue where we left off in the last video. So in the last video we briefly discussed about how to get the value from the field by getting the value with the help of a getParameter method. Okay, so we have written somewhat like a statement. We discussed about something like writing request dot get parameter, and we discussed about how get parameter takes a string type, and in the string type you just have to supply the nickname of the field. We discussed about using a nickname called username, and we discussed about how this method call basically gets the value entered by the user, and that value can be used either to print directly to the console with the help of system.out.println, or we can also use it to print it to the web page with the help of uh, with the help of changing the code of our do get method. We also discussed about how do get method is the default method, and etc. Okay, now what we are going to do next is we are going to make slight changes in the program. Okay, and ultimately the goal of this particular video is to create a JSP file. Goal of the video is um, use a JSP file to get the same result. Okay, use a JSP file instead of servlet. Okay, that is the goal of this video. Let us continue. Okay, so this is where we left off, and let me clean things a bit. You can find all of this information in the previous video, so let me just clean this up. Okay, so this is where we left off. Okay, now guys, let us try to understand that this code is still a little bit complicated. Okay, what we are writing here, why are we writing here, this is a bit complicated. Let us try to simplify this a little bit. Okay, so first of all, let us try to understand what is happening here. When the toGet method is called, this part is getting executed definitely, and by the way, this is not hard coded anymore. Okay, so what is happening here? What is this? We have used something called request.getParameter, which is the request object sent by the browser. Okay, and using that request object we are calling this getParameter method, supplying the username, and whatever value that is entered by the user is returned as a string value. That's great. Okay, that is what we are using directly here. In the last video we also have learned how to print it on the console, but that's great. What is response? Response is another predefined object of type HTTP servlet response. HTTP servlet response is an interface, and this response reference variable is actually referring to a response object which will be built by our Tomcat server to send the response back from the servlet to the browser. Okay, and this response object is available to our servlet, and we when we are running this particular statement, we are basically adding, if you read this particular method name called append method is basically adding this information to the result of the response object. Okay, so what is exactly happening here? So we are taking the response object which is available to do get method, and we are calling this method called getWriter. GetWriter method basically returns a PrintWriter type of an object which is capable of writing content to the web pages, writing content to the web pages created by our servlet. Okay, so it is giving us a PrintWriter object. You can just move your mouse over getWriter to see it. This is the return type. PrintWriter is the return type, and after getting the PrintWriter object, that PrintWriter object on which we are calling this append method and supplying the string value that needs to be printed. So instead of append method, you can also write print method. It will also do the same job, or you can write println method. That will also do the same job. That is your choice. Append method basically kinds of adds something to the existing content. Okay, fine. So this is the overall understanding of this line. But still, if you are finding it difficult to understand, let me break it down into single simple pieces, which will be comparatively easier to understand. Okay, so let us do this. Let me take this part as a separate thing, then this part as a separate thing, and also this part as a separate thing. Okay, so first things first, this part I will store it in a separate variable and use it here, and I will show you that it will give the same result. Okay, so let me take this part, cut it, and before this line I'm creating a string variable. Let's say name is equal to this value. Okay, so I'm writing request.getParameter username, and I'm saving the return value of this method call to this variable called name. And so this name variable, I'm going to put it here where we earlier wrote this part. So we are not doing anything special here. We just put that method call. We are just saving the return value and then using the variable here. So nothing special at all. It will still work the same way as expected. So let us test it. I'm going to refresh this page. Let me close this for not for. Okay, refresh this page. I'm going to enter a different name. Let us say I'm going to enter Rohit. Okay, and then click on submit button. See, it is the same exact result. Great. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to change it further. Okay, we want to store this part response.getWriter into its own object, PrintWriter object. Okay, because we know that getWriter method returns what? PrintWriter type. Okay, so let's say PrintWriter. PrintWriter is a class which is available in java.io package. If you want to check it, you also check it here. Let me hide this line for now. When you move your mouse here, it is saying PrintWriter. Okay, and when you just move your mouse over here, it says this is a class or interface in java.io. So it is a package, it is a file from java.io package. Okay, so we just have to import it so that we can use it. Import java.io.PrintWriter. Okay, and I'm going to enable this now, and I will be using a variable called pw to reference PrintWriter reference type, and then I'm going to write this part response.getWriter. I'm just copying it and pasting it here, semicolon. Okay, so now that we have stored this information, the return value of getWriter into pw variable, I can write pw in this place. So let us write it pw in the place of this. And you see that complicated line is broken down into simpler pieces, and we will get the same result once again. Let us run this. Going back, refresh. This time let's give a different name. Let's say Rajeshwari, which is my mom's name. Okay, click submit. See, cool. Okay guys, let's go back. So that was it guys. Now what we are going to do is we are going to write the exact same program with the help of a JSP. Okay, we will write the same exact program. Currently we are writing a servlet program. Okay, this is a servlet program. How do we know that? Because this class is inheriting from this another class called http servlet. Okay, and so our class is also a servlet class. We have written a servlet program. Now let us try to get the exact same result with the help of a JSP. But let me tell you guys, JSP is a much more simpler way of writing the same result. Okay, let me show you how to do that. I'm closing the greeting class because I don't want this result now. I don't want to use it right now. Okay, and let me remind you that how that greeting class is executing, because when we click on the submit button, it executes anything that is mentioned in the value of action attribute of the form tag. Okay, I have written greeting. What will happen if I'm not writing greeting here? Is it really connected to the greeting.java file? Let us check it. Okay, I'm going to change this name as, let us say, greeting with G small. Okay, like this. Okay, this is also greeting, but the first letter is small letter, while the class name capital first letter is greeting with G capital. Okay, will that affect the result? I'm saving it and going back to the result, going back to the page. I'm going back to index.html, refresh, and I'm going to give a different name. Let us say Winnie the Pooh. Okay, let's click okay. Oh, it failed, guys. It failed. What is happening? It is saying greeting is not available. As we discussed earlier, whenever it says status 404 and some resource is not available, it just means that the file is not existing. And in our case, we have already checked that we have actually changed the name. So whatever you are writing, should it must match the class name? Is that so? Actually, that is not the case, guys. That is not the actual case. You need not match the class name. Actually, it should match what you are writing here. Okay, so whatever you're writing in the action attribute of your HTML page, okay, that means the resource it has to go to when submit button is clicked, that resource name should match your web servlet's name. That is very important. So what is this web servlet? This is starting with @ symbol. Anything that starts with @ symbol in Java, that is called an annotation. @ web servlet here is a Java annotation. Okay, you can explore more about what Java annotation is. Basically, this one basically connects the Java program with whatever that is written here in action attribute. Okay, previously it was written like this. Okay, so whatever name that you have written here should match whatever name that is written here. That is the point. Okay, so if we are changing this to small g, maybe we also have to change it here to small g. Okay, and if you remember, we also discussed that when we are running this program, running the HTML program, clicking on the submit button, when it goes to this resource, this exact name is visible in your address bar. Okay, let us check it. In the address bar, I want you to observe after the project name, it is greeting with small g. That means it is trying to access this particular resource, but it could not find it. Okay, so now going back, if I'm giving greeting here with small g and I'm changing my greeting.java's web servlet part as greeting with small g, will it work? Let us test it. I'm going back, refresh. I'm giving the same name, Winnie the Pooh. I'm clicking on submit. Wow, now it's working. Okay, so one thing to learn from here is that this action attributes value should match in your Java file, in your servlet file, this part, @web servlet part. Okay, cool. So having discussed this, now let me close this file and let me create a JSP file, which is going to be the result of this page instead of that greeting servlet file. Okay, so let me create a JSP file. As I mentioned earlier, guys, JSP files are also type of HTML files which will be located under web app folder. Okay, so I'm just going to the web app folder, right click and going to new, and I'm this time going to choose this file called JSP file. Okay, and I'm going to call this JSP file as greeting.jsp file. Okay, so I'm giving the name as greeting.jsp with small g, of course. Okay, and then click finish and see greeting.jsp is created just on around the same folder where index.html page is created. And I also want you to observe that this particular file looks almost like a HTML page except that first line. Okay, the first line basically represents that it is a JSP file. This part where you can see this angle followed by percentage symbols, they are called they are kind of special symbols representing that it is a JSP file. Okay, they are special type of tags. Now we are not kind of discussing those specific type of tags. I'm just going to show you very briefly how can you write a JSP file which is doing the same job, giving the same result, but how simple can it be? Okay, so first of all, let me change this title to something else, like maybe greeting the user. Okay, and inside the body tag, what I want now, because this JSP file is not a servlet file, it is not a Java code, it is actually containing HTML code. Here you need not write a lot of things. Why? Let me show you something. We are writing directly h1 tag. Okay, and in the h1 tag, just like my greeting.html, greeting Java, in greeting Java, what we are writing in h1, we are writing welcome comma space and ending with exclamatory. So I'll write the same thing, welcome comma space ending with an exclamatory, but with just before the exclamatory, just like we need name here, which name actually internally stores what? It stores request.getParameter. Okay, that is exactly what we are going to write. We are going to write request.getParameter here, and let me tell you guys, that is enough. Okay, so what we have to write is, let me just copy this part and we are going to write it here. But the problem is, when we are just writing this directly inside the HTML tags, that will be printed as it is. That should not happen, but let me show you that. Okay, first of all, let us go to index.html and we just have to change this action attributes value to greeting.jsp. okay, so this is the file name of our JSP file, greeting.jsp. that is the file name. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell my program is that when you click on the submit button, it has to execute the code of greeting.jsp, and in greeting.jsp I'm writing something like this. Currently this will be treated as text, it will not take the value from the username field. Okay, so let me just show you. Going back. Okay, and I'm going to run a different name, let us say Kala. Okay, when I click on the submit button, I want you to observe, oh, it is taking the exact value that was typed there. We don't want it here, we actually want this value in this place, which is currently not happening, right? So how to do it? In the code, what we are going to do is, wherever we want the value directly, and that value may be stored in a variable and we are using a variable, or maybe there is a method call and that method call is returning a value. Whenever there are such situations, let me write that down. Okay, whenever the value or variable or a method call is need to be used, you have to use a different type of tag, different type of a JSP tag. I told you this is one type of a JSP tag which is starting with angle, percentage and at the rate symbol. This is now going to be another type of a JSP tag which starts like this. Use another JSP tag. And how does it look? It looks like this: angle, percentage, equal, followed by percentage, angle. That is the syntax. Okay, and this syntax you have to use whenever you want to write a value which has whose val I mean that value has to be printed directly, or if you are using a variable whose value has to be accessed at this particular place, or if you are writing a method call whose return value has to be accessed at this particular place, then you should use this type of a tag. So in this case we are using a method call. This is a method call whose return value has to come here, and so we have to use this tag. Okay, so whatever you want to be, whatever it is, value, variable or method call, should go after this equal symbol before the closing braces. Okay, so this is the opening part. I'm going to cut it and put it here, and this is the closing part. I'm going to cut it and put it just before exclamatory mark and after this closing parenthesis, like this. Okay, now what it becomes, I want you to closely observe this, guys. Now what is happening is that we are writing what? We are writing welcome comma space followed by this particular method's return value followed by exclamatory mark. That is what we are trying to know. Okay, let me reduce this part. Okay, that's it. See guys, how simple this code looks. How this works, we will discuss. Okay, and I'm going to close this greeting.java, and index.html is already updated. I'm going to go and check the result. Okay, back, refresh, and let's say a completely different name. Yeah, we can use color now, KLA. Okay, now when I click on the submit button, oh, see guys, this is working exactly like how Servlet was working, but with a far lesser code than what we have written in Servlets. Okay guys, that's it for this session, for this video. We'll meet again in the next video where we'll try to extend the program. Bye bye.